I never expected to be someone's plus one to a wedding, let alone one that would change the course of my life. But that's exactly what happened when my friend Alex asked me to accompany him to his mother's wedding. Looking back now, I can see all the little moments that led to that day, but at the time, I was completely oblivious to how significant this invitation would become. Let me take you back to where it all began. Alex and I had known each other for about 2 years. We met through mutual friends at a local coffee shop that hosted poetry nights on Thursdays. I remember being drawn to his laugh. It was genuine and warm, the kind that makes you want to be part of whatever joke inspired it. We started as casual acquaintances, occasionally bumping into each other at social gatherings, but over time, our friendship deepened. We discovered shared interests in obscure indie films, hiking trails that tourists didn't know about, and a mutual addiction to those little pastries from the bakery on 5th Street. You know, the ones with the almond filling that somehow taste like childhood memories. There was always something unspoken between us, a current of energy that neither of us acknowledged directly. I'd catch him looking at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention, and I'm sure he caught me doing the same. But we existed in that comfortable space between friendship and something more, neither of us brave enough to disrupt the equilibrium we'd established. The invitation came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. We were huddled in my apartment, attempting to assemble a bookshelf I'd ordered online that came with instructions that might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics. Alex was holding 2 pieces that clearly didn't fit together, insisting that the diagram showed they should connect, when his phone rang. I watched his expression shift as he spoke to his mother, his brow furrowing slightly before relaxing into a smile. When he hung up, he sat on my half-assembled bookshelf with a sigh that contained both happiness and apprehension. "My mom's getting married again," he said, turning his phone in his hands. "In 3 weeks? To Richard. You know, the guy she's been seeing for the past year." I nodded, remembering the stories Alex had shared about Richard, a kind-hearted landscape architect who had slowly won over his mother after her difficult divorce from Alex's father 5 years earlier. "That's great news, isn't it? You like Richard?" "I do," Alex agreed, but there was hesitation in his voice. It's going to be this whole big thing. All the extended family will be there, including my dad's side because, somehow, they all stayed friends after the divorce. And everyone's going to be asking me about my life, my job, my—" He paused, looking down at his hands, "my relationships." I understood immediately. Alex had come out to me about a year into our friendship, sharing that he was gay but wasn't out to his entire family yet. His parents knew, as did his sister, but the extended family, particularly some of the older, more traditional relatives, were still in the dark. Family gatherings always carried a weight of anxiety for him, a constant calculation about what to share and what to hide. "I can't face them all alone," he continued, looking up at me with those expressive brown eyes that always seemed to reflect exactly what he was feeling. Would you consider coming with me? As my plus one?" The question hung in the air between us, carrying more significance than a simple invitation to a wedding. I felt my heart rate quicken as I considered what he was really asking. Was this just about moral support, or was there something more behind those words? And what would his family think if he brought me, another man, as his date to his mother's wedding? "You want me to be your date?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light while seeking clarification. Alex ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd noticed early in our friendship. I need someone there who knows me, really knows me. Someone I don't have to pretend around. And maybe it's time I stopped hiding so much from my family. Not a big announcement or anything, but just being more honest about who I am. How could I say no to that? Despite my own reservations, I'd only met his mother twice and his sister once, never the extended family he spoke about with such a mixture of affection and anxiety. I found myself nodding. "Of course I'll come with you. What are friends for, right?" The relief on his face was immediate and palpable, but there was something else there too, a flicker of something that looked almost like disappointment at my use of the word friends. But it passed so quickly I convinced myself I had imagined it. "Thank you," he said simply, reaching out to squeeze my hand. The touch lingered just a moment longer than usual, sending a familiar warmth up my arm. "This means more than you know." In the days that followed, the wedding became our primary topic of conversation. Alex shared details about the venue, a renovated barn on the outskirts of the city that his mother had fallen in love with, and about the various family members I would meet. There was Aunt Patricia, who collected porcelain cats and would definitely try to set Alex up with a nice girl, if left to her own devices. Uncle Robert, who had been known to turn any conversation into a debate about politics. Cousins ranging from the ultra-conservative to the wildly progressive, all bound together by complicated family ties that stretched back generations. And what about your dad? I asked one evening as we sat in my living room, looking through photos of past family gatherings so I could put faces to the names Alex had been mentioning. Alex's expression softened. He'll be there. He and Mom actually get along pretty well now. He's bringing his girlfriend, Diane. She's nice, a literature professor who quotes poetry at random moments. Dad seems happy with her. And how do you feel about all of this? Your mom remarrying, your dad moving on too. Alex considered the question, taking a sip of his tea before answering. Honestly, I'm happy for them. The divorce was hard, but necessary. They're better people apart than they were together. And I think seeing them find happiness again has made me think about what I want in my own life. His eyes met mine briefly before looking away, and I felt that familiar flutter in my chest. We were edging closer to something, a conversation we'd been dancing around for months. But neither of us seemed ready to take that final step, to put words to the feelings that existed in the spaces between our conversations. Instead, we shifted to more practical matters. What to wear to the wedding. This led to an impromptu shopping trip that weekend, trying on suits and debating the merits of different tie colors in the cramped fitting rooms of department stores. There was an intimacy to these moments, adjusting each other's collars, offering honest opinions about how fabrics draped and colors complemented. Our hands would brush, and sometimes linger, and each time it happened, the air between us seemed to charge with unspoken possibilities. What do you think your family will think? I finally asked as we stood in front of a mirror, Alex behind me adjusting the shoulders of a navy suit I was trying on. About you bringing me, I mean. His eyes met mine in the reflection. Some of them will assume exactly what's happening. Others will convince themselves you're just a friend, regardless of what I say. That's how family works sometimes. They see what they want to see. And what exactly is happening, Alex? I turned to face him directly, suddenly tired of the ambiguity that had characterized our relationship for so long. He looked startled by my directness, his hands falling away from my shoulders. For a moment, I thought he might deflect, might retreat back to the safety of our undefined friendship. But instead, he took a deep breath and said, I'm bringing someone I care about deeply to meet my family. Someone who's become incredibly important to me. How that gets labeled? I guess that's something we should talk about, isn't it? It was the most direct acknowledgement either of us had made of the feelings between us, and it left me momentarily speechless. Before I could formulate a response, a sales associate knocked on the fitting room door, asking if we needed different sizes, and the moment was broken. We purchased our suits, mine navy, his charcoal gray, and left the store with the conversation unfinished, hovering between us like a promise waiting to be kept. The days leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Alex became increasingly nervous, not just about the wedding itself, but about what bringing me might signify to his family. We had late-night phone conversations where he shared his fears, of rejection, of awkwardness, of somehow detracting from his mother's special day. I reassured him as best I could, while dealing with my own anxieties about meeting his extended family in such a significant context. And then, suddenly, the day arrived. I woke early, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made it difficult to eat breakfast. Alex picked me up at 10, looking handsome in his new suit, but with tension evident in the set of his shoulders and the tightness around his eyes. As I got into his car, he gave me a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ready for this? He asked, his fingers tapping an anxious rhythm on the steering wheel. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, reaching over to still his tapping fingers with my hand. It's going to be okay, Alex. Whatever happens, we'll handle it together. He turned his hand to squeeze mine briefly before putting the car in drive. Together, he repeated softly, as if testing how the word felt in this new context. The drive to the venue took about an hour, leading us out of the city and into rolling countryside that was just beginning to show the first hints of autumn color. Alex alternated between nervous chatter and contemplative silence, while I tried to be a calming presence beside him. As we turned onto the long driveway leading to the barn, gravel crunching beneath the tires, I could feel him tensing beside me. We can still say we're just friends, he said suddenly, as the barn came into view. If that would be easier. If you're not comfortable with whatever this is becoming. I turned to look at him, taking in his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the slight furrow between his brows, the vulnerability in his expression. Is that what you want? He was quiet for a long moment before shaking his head. No, but I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position either. Alex, I said gently, waiting until he glanced at me before continuing. I'm here because I want to be with you. However you want to introduce me, whatever you want this to be, I'm all in. The smile that spread across his face then was genuine, reaching his eyes and softening the tension that had been there all morning. Thank you, he said simply, and those two words contained volumes. We parked among the rows of cars already lining the gravel lot and made our way toward the barn, which had been transformed with white drapery, fairy lights, and arrangements of wildflowers. Guests in formal attire milled about outside, some clearly family members greeting each other with warm embraces, others friends of the couple chatting in small groups. Alex took a deep breath beside me, and then, in a gesture that felt both significant and natural, reached for my hand. Our fingers interlaced, and together we walked toward his family. The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions. Alex's mother, radiant in a simple cream-colored dress, embraced me warmly and thanked me for coming. His sister Megan, with whom I'd briefly met once before, gave me a knowing smile and a whispered, "It's about time," that made me blush. Alex's father, a taller, grayer version of his son, shook my hand firmly and engaged me in conversation about my work, seeming genuinely interested in getting to know me. But it was the extended family that provided the real range of reactions. Aunt Patricia, true to Alex's description, initially asked if I had any sisters before realizing the nature of our relationship, at which point her eyebrows nearly disappeared into her hairline. Uncle Robert engaged us both in a surprisingly progressive conversation about LGBTQ+ rights in the workplace. Cousins varied from openly enthusiastic to politely reserved, but no one was outright hostile, a fact that seemed to both surprise and relieve Alex. Throughout these interactions, Alex kept me close, his hand often finding mine or resting lightly on my back. Each touch felt like a statement, a quiet declaration of something we were still defining between ourselves. I watched him grow more relaxed as the day progressed, as if each accepting interaction with a family member was releasing a small portion of the tension he'd carried for so long. The ceremony itself was beautiful in its simplicity. Alex's mother and Richard exchanged vows beneath an arch of autumn flowers, their words personal and moving. I found myself unexpectedly emotional, especially when I glanced at Alex beside me and saw the sheen of tears in his eyes as he watched his mother begin this new chapter of her life. Without thinking, I reached for his hand, and he held on tightly, our fingers intertwined throughout the remainder of the ceremony. It was during the reception, however, that the moment came that would shift everything between us. We were standing near the makeshift bar set up in one corner of the barn, Alex introducing me to a group of his mother's friends, when his grandmother approached. She was a small woman with bright eyes and Alex's same warm smile, moving slowly with the aid of a cane, but with an air of determination that commanded attention. "Alexandra," Alex said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "I'd like you to meet." "This must be the young man I've been hearing about," she interrupted, her eyes twinkling as she looked me up and down. "Your mother mentioned you were bringing someone special." I felt Alex tense beside me, and I understood his hesitation. From what he had told me, his grandmother was the family matriarch, respected and loved, but also traditional in many ways. Her acceptance or rejection would carry significant weight. Alex took a deep breath, and then, in a voice that trembled only slightly, said, "Grandma, this is James. He's more than a friend to me. Much more." The words hung in the air between us, the first clear definition either of us had given to our relationship. I felt a surge of emotion, joy, nervousness, and something deeper that I wasn't quite ready to name yet. Alexandra's expression was unreadable for a moment as she studied me, and I resisted the urge to fidget under her scrutiny. Then, to both our surprise, she smiled and extended her hand to me. "Well, it's about time Alex brought someone worth bringing home. I was beginning to think he'd never find someone who made him look as happy as you clearly do." The relief on Alex's face was palpable, and I felt my own tension dissolve as I shook her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. Alex has told me so much about you. All terrifying, I hope," she said with a wink. "A grandmother should maintain a certain mystique." Then, more seriously, she added, "Be good to each other. That's all that matters in the end." With those words, she patted Alex's cheek affectionately and moved on to greet other guests, leaving us standing there in a moment that felt profoundly changed. Alex turned to me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and joy. More than a friend, I repeated his words back to him, unable to keep the smile from my face. Is that what I am? He looked at me then with such openness, such vulnerability, that it took my breath away. You've always been more than a friend, James. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know if you felt the same way. The honesty of the moment demanded honesty in return. I felt it for a long time, I admitted. I just didn't want to risk what we had if you didn't feel the same way. Around us, the reception continued, music playing, people dancing, conversations flowing. But in that moment, it felt like we were in our own world, the culmination of months of unspoken feelings finally finding voice. Can I kiss you? Alex asked softly, his eyes never leaving mine. Right here, in front of everyone? Instead of answering with words, I closed the distance between us, bringing my lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home. It was brief, appropriate for the public setting, but it contained the promise of so much more. When we parted, I was aware of a few glances in our direction, some surprised, others knowing, but the world didn't stop. The sky didn't fall. And Alex was looking at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, cake, and conversations with family members who now approached us as a couple rather than two individuals. Some asked direct questions about our relationship, which we answered honestly if somewhat vaguely, still figuring things out ourselves. Others simply included me in family stories and inside jokes, a tacit acceptance that warmed me from within. As the evening wound down, Alex's mother found us sitting at a table, watching the last few couples on the dance floor. She sat beside Alex, radiant with happiness from her day, and took his hand. Thank you for being here, she said, looking between us. Both of you. It means the world to me to have my family around me today. I wouldn't have missed it, Alex replied, squeezing her hand. I'm so happy for you, Mom. She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. And I'm happy for you too, she said, her gaze including me in the statement. It's a beautiful thing to see you being true to yourself, Alex. That's all I've ever wanted for you. After she left to rejoin her new husband, Alex was quiet, a thoughtful expression on his face. What are you thinking about? I asked, nudging his shoulder gently with mine. I'm thinking about how scared I was to bring you here today, he admitted. How I've spent years worrying about what my family would think, how they would react. And now that it's happening, now that they know, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. Like this is how it was always supposed to be. The drive home that night was different from the tense journey that morning. Alex drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding mine on the console between us. We talked about the wedding, about his family's reactions, about small moments I had missed and observations he wanted to share. But beneath these conversations ran a current of anticipation, a shared awareness that something fundamental had shifted between us. When we reached my apartment, neither of us wanted the night to end. We sat in his parked car, streetlights casting a soft glow through the windows, both reluctant to say goodbye. So, Alex finally said, turning in his seat to face me. I introduced you as more than a friend today, but I think we should probably figure out what that actually means. I smiled, appreciating his directness. What do you want it to mean? He considered the question seriously, his eyes never leaving mine. I want it to mean that I can call you in the middle of the night when I can't sleep. That I can send you random texts about things that remind me of you. That I can kiss you whenever I want to, not just at special occasions. That sounds like a boyfriend to me, I said, my heart racing at finally putting a name to what we were becoming. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. Boyfriend, he repeated, as if testing how the word felt. I like the sound of that. So do I agreed, leaning across the console to kiss him, a proper kiss this time, slow and deep and full of promise. We've been together officially for 6 months now. Alex's family has fully embraced our relationship, including us both in holiday gatherings and Sunday dinners. His grandmother has become one of my biggest advocates, proudly introducing me to her friends at church as Alex's young man. There have been challenges too, of course, a few more conservative relatives who needed time to adjust, our own learning curve of transitioning from friendship to romance, the inevitable disagreements that come with merging two lives. But through it all, I'm grateful for that wedding invitation, for Alex's courage in introducing me as more than a friend, for the journey we've begun together. Sometimes the most significant moments in our lives come disguised as simple questions. Will you be my plus one? That open doors to possibilities we never imagined. And as for Alex and me, we're taking things one day at a time, building our relationship on the solid foundation of friendship that brought us together in the first place. We still go to that coffee shop on Thursday nights, still hike those hidden trails, still argue over the last pastry from the bakery on 5th Street. But now, there's more. Shared mornings and whispered secrets, plans for the future and memories being made every day. It's everything I never knew I wanted, and it all began with a wedding invitation and the courage to be honest about who we are and what we mean to each other. Sometimes I think about that moment in the fitting room, when I asked Alex what was happening between us. If I had known then where that conversation would lead, to family introductions, to public declarations, to the relationship we're building now, would I have been brave enough to ask the question? I like to think I would have. Because some questions, even the scariest ones, are worth asking. Some journeys, even the uncertain ones, are worth taking. And some people, like Alex, are worth being brave for. Total_char_count, 18,675.